Hello and welcome to another Zach Carnage video. Today we have something very special. This is a UK National Championship format duel video between Brandish or Sky Strikers and Altergeist. So I'm going to be piloting these Sky Strikers. This is actually the second time I've ever used the deck, and you can take a quick look at the list now. You see I'm running the Foolish Goods engine not with the Toon Table of Contents, so just with the usual Metaphors Fusion. This is also the Diablos build, based on a vote from the competitive TCG group. The decision was to play the Diablos build over anything else because the pure build doesn't really put out anything that's particularly strong, and the invoked build just doesn't work without the Link Monster. So then for the Altergeist build, this is going to be piloted by Callum. So he's been testing this for a little while. If you want full explanations of the two lists, let me know in the comment section, and we'll consider making a sort of top deck-esque video where we discuss the choices for each of these decks. So you can see it's mostly fairly standard. He's got some main deck cool stuff like the anti-spells, which perhaps are becoming a bit more common at the moment. He's got the heavy storm dusters in there as well for spell and trap removal, and playing the Conqueree because it does occasionally become pretty useful in certain scenarios. So with that all said, let's get on with the actual duels. So kicking things off with game one, on the left hand side we got the Sky Strikers, and on the right we have the Altergeist. So opening up pretty bricky with the Sky Strikers, just setting 2 on pass. Altergeist begin with a duality, taking, I believe, Marionetta there. So we see a normal summon of Marionetta come down, which then attempts to search, being struck. And a set 2 pass. In the end phase, Twin Twisters, ditching Diablos, deals with those 2 back row. So back to Sky Striker, fairly bricky hand, just setting 1 and passing. So Altergeist go with the second duality, this time taking a manifestation. So he does have the Marionetta engrave, which is pretty useful. So setting 2 and passing again for the Altergeist. And Sky Strikers setting again, so just powering through a series of bricks here at the moment. Manifestation comes down in the end phase, targeting Marionetta, which gets hit by Call by the Grave. And because it's resolved, we have a multi-faker attempting to come down. After the summon, it activates, Ash Blossom gets played against that, but a strike deals with the Ash Blossom. So we end up with a multi-faker and a Silquitous, I believe, which bounces the set and the multi-faker. So switching Silk to attack, deal a little bit of damage there, setting and passing again. Some very low on resources for Sky Strikers at the moment, but it's okay because we drew into Ray. So Ray is able to attack over the Silk, deal a little bit of damage, and then still in battle phase, we use the quick effect of the Ray to change it up. So the manifestation being added back from the Silk there. So Ray turns into the Shizuku and triggers the Diablos engrave, so a lot of damage being put on the board at this stage, but still not enough to actually do game here. So setting 1, and then during the end phase getting the search from Shizuku, but that gets hit by an infinite transience or infinite impermanence, and following that multi-faker can come down and bring out a Meluseek from the deck. So that's going to be an additional search there. So those 2 go into the Hextia. Hextia will be struck here. Now Hextia is not getting the search, but there was a Meluseek that was sent to the grave for the summon of that Hextia, so that will be able to search for the Silk. Marionetta comes in, setting a Protocol. And then Marionetta targeting itself, and I think it's a multi-faker, but we'll just double check. Yep, and down comes multi-faker again, so this time I'm going to be summoning, what's it summoning from the deck? A Silquitous, which obviously cannot target the Diabolos, but can target the Shizuku here, so minor misplay. We forgot to trigger the Ray here, which should have happened in response to Shizuku leaving the field. So Diabolos attacks into the Silk, but Conqueree comes down, negating the effects of the Diabolos and negating the attack as well. Manifestation for a Marionetta here, triggering a Multi-Faker and the Multi-Faker summoning a Meluseek. So really full board for Altergeist at this stage. So Callum just considering his options. He takes 4 of his monsters, turns them into a Borreload, and then adds back from the Meluseek and from the Silk, I believe. Activates the Manifestation, so now he has access to monsters in the grave and the Multi-Faker in hand, and the Borreload, so that's definitely going to be game. So we move on to game 2. So Brick's really holding back the Sky Strikers in game 1. Let's see if we can change things up. So we have Altergeist taking turn 1 here, following Siding. And a Marionetta setting the M-Elf, which is the one that turns into a monster and protects all the back row. And then a set 4 is looking pretty strong, but no anti-spell in the standby phase, so it looks like we're okay for now. See a multi-roll come down, which is the one that's a bit like a Judgment if you don't know, and then Startup, which is obviously the Searcher. So the aim here is to pretty much resolve as many spells as possible under the multi-roll, generate as much advantage as can be done, so that in the following turns we can actually do something, because I don't believe that there's access to enough to deal significant damage. We can pick apart the board slowly, as well, with things like the wave, so adding the wave there. And a response to that is flipping up the Protocol, which is allowed because it does have a continuous effect. And then following that we see MLF being triggered, and that gets summoned next to the Marionetta. Foolish Barrel Goods comes down, sending, I believe, oh, we'll just wait and see. So send a Widow Anchor, with the idea that we'll be able to set it with the multi-roll later on in the turn, or during the end phase. And now we have a Startup Engage with 3 spells in the grave live. So this can add the Ray, and get a draw as well. Just double checking MLF, it does say that you cannot target Altergeist, the spells or traps, or it might just be traps actually. So we see Wave come down, targeting a face down, and then killing off the MLF as well because we have 3 spells in the grave. And Normal Summon Array. Unfortunately, Marionetta is actually pretty strong, so we have to go into Kagari first. Activating the effect of Kagari here. And Callum just thinking about whether he wants to use the Protocol to negate that. And he decides to negate it with the Marionetta. So Ray comes out, punches for 15. And then during the battle phase uses the effect to turn itself into Shizuku to punch for another 15. And then in the end phase, we're going to activate the effect of the multi-roll in order to set these spells that we've got in the grave, but unfortunately we see Heavy Storm Duster come down, taking out what was actually a set Typhoon and a multi-roll. So Shizuku can have Search, but unfortunately we've got loads of the really important spells in the grave, so we can't search for Startup, we can't search for Pulsar anymore because it's in the grave, and the same, we can't even search for the Widow Anchor now because that was put in the grave, expected to be added back with a multi-roll. So I believe it was taking an afterburner there. So we see Meluseek come down, and here's a bit of a mistake. Meluseek is actually on 0 attack points at this moment, so it can't do any damage because of the effect of Shizuku. But we entirely forgot this at that point, so we put the damage through for Meluseek and end up in an agreed game state where for some reason Shizuku's effect wasn't going off. So Meluseek takes out the Shizuku, and because it's in damage step we can't use the Ray to bring itself out. Then Meluseek going into Clara and Rushka, and I believe a Kunkery was added from the deck there, and then Manifestation adding the ML Elf back to the hand. So standby phase and ML Elf comes out, triggering a multi-faker in hand, so a ton of advantage generated from this. The multi-faker bringing out a Meliseek. That reduces the amount of disruption that's available to Callum at the moment, but it does guarantee him pretty much a search because there isn't any removal within the deck that isn't going to send Meliseek to the graveyard. So Afterburner takes out the ML Elf and the Protocol. And then a Ray is summoned. Ray can beat over the Clara and Rushka here. So punches for 15. And then still in battle phase turns itself into Kagari. Adding back a startup engage. So the idea here was, wanted something, adding back the Afterburner, we wanted something that would actually be useful in the following turn. Although potentially it would have been better to just resolve it now and deal with back row in case of another multi-faker available. So perhaps that was the wrong play to make. So turning Kagari into Shizuku here, sitting on one set card, and adding a Shark Cannon here. Kind of limited by the number of things that are in the grave, unfortunately, with what we can actually search. So we see a Silcatus come out. And then a Link Summon straight into a Hextia here. And through the adding effects, I think he's getting back a Manifestation, and I think that might be a multi-figure. Setting one and passing. Oh, he added the Protocol there. So Protocol comes out, triggering the multi-faker again, and now suddenly the Hextia is live, so this is a serious issue at this point. Shizuku's turned into Kagari in order to attempt to add back stuff from the grave. But there is a live Protocol here which could very easily just negate it. So he opts to not play that yet, and when Startup is played, he's not going to negate that either. So he's basically saving the Hextia negate for something that he deems to be a big enough issue. So adding a Hornet Bit here, just trying to guarantee that I'll have something following my attempt to remove his monsters. The Hextia is pretty beefy at the moment because it is pointing to a multi-faker. So Afterburner is going to get rid of that multi-faker, because Hextia will be activated to negate the Afterburner. Silk will return the Kagari and the Protocol. Now Ray can technically crash into the Hextia at this point, but it doesn't really do enough, so I opt to go for the Shizuku, which does reduce his monster's attack. And that way I can attack over the Hextia here. He is able to add off that, unfortunately, but there's not really anything that can be done about that. Not at least inside of the EU regions. In the North American region, obviously we have the Shark Cannon available, so I could have removed the Hextia there. Now at this point, I have a fair amount of advantage. I'm just weighing up what he's actually got on the field and what he's able to do in the next turn. And I'm pretty much of the opinion that the main way that he's going to be able to do anything is by setting up a ton of traps and then blowing me out by just using them over and over again. So here I'm basically considering, is there any way that I can get rid of all of them very quickly? So I begin with a Widow Anchor, targeting the Silk, and then chaining a Hornet Bit to summon a token. That way I didn't have any monsters, so both of them could have been activated at the same time. Sorry, any monsters in the main monster zone. So first off, making a Phoenix, discarding evenly to take out the back row just in case it's something that's potentially too dangerous, and summoning out Trisbania. So here you're going to see my mistake. So I set one, I consider setting a second, and I decide I'll just keep it in my hand. And then I proceed to let him set multiple cards during his own turn. And at this point I think, oh, I'm really far ahead, I can just use Shark Cannon, summon something from his grave, and that way I'll not only banish his monster from the grave, but I will also banish all of his back row. And initially we were like, oh yeah, we'll just let that go through, and then he realizes that he actually has a Ghost Girl in hand, and we're trying to bring you what would be the more competitive version, as opposed to the version including the mistakes that we make. So anytime we see a mistake, we try and sort of eradicate it. So he brings down the Ghost Girl, the Yukawa Usagi, I think it's called, negating the Shark Cannon, meaning that Trisbania cannot activate because we can't put anything beneath it. So we have to go straight into my next turn. So Manifestation comes out, targeting a multi-faker in the grave. We're just considering what line of play is correct for the two of us at this point. And I opt to go with the Hornet while it's in the graveyard still. So Callum's just reading the Trisbania if you're wondering where it's gone. And he chains to the Hornet Bit by playing the Emelelf. So a token gets summoned beneath Trisbania. When it attempts to activate, Protocol is played in order to negate the Trisbania, getting rid of the Emelelf. And then a multi-figure is then finally summoned off the Manifestation, which summons, I believe that's a Marionetta there. So out comes Kagari. You are going to see another small mistake coming up from the interaction here. So Kagari will activate. I believe it's going to attempt to add an engage here. And Callum then activates Protocol a second time in the same turn, so we sort of lost track of whose turn it was partway through this section, because it's just so much stuff going on. So Callum actually thought it was his turn at one point, was going to activate the Marionetta sort of thing. So after the Kagari goes, Ray is able to come out. And yeah, it was at this moment that I figured, oh, I have access to Diabolos because I've just drawn a Shrine, which is potentially the way that I'm going to win this game. So I attempt to activate the Ray, realizing that I have no Sky Strikers left in the extra deck. So be careful, guys, don't burn through all of your resources. Although potentially, you know, things could have gone a bit differently if the Kagari had resolved, adding a startup to get Hercules base, that sort of thing. So we see the usual stuff from Altergeist, bringing out a Melistique and making a Hextia here, getting a Search, summoning a Marionetta. Marionetta gets to set the Manifestation, so just generating all of the advantage here. Hextia punches over the Ray, and it is boosted by the Marionetta there, so it's actually on 3,100 attack points for that single Link 2 monster there. And all I can do is literally just set a single card, and it's definitely not going to be enough, so we just play out the turn for Callum. He uses Manifestation to bring out a Silk, I believe. And that's more than enough for the game there. So Altergeist take this round. Let us know what you thought of this video. If you have any comments or suggestions that you would like to make, feel free to put them in the comment section down below. Remember to inform us of all of the mistakes that we made so that we can learn from this. This is still very much an early stage for the two of us with playing these decks, and we want to learn all of the interactions and see how they develop before the national format arrives. And which one do you think is better? Do you think that Altergeist are better with their ability to sort of generate an advantage slightly more slowly in a sense, but Multi-Faker putting you through so much access to everything within the deck? Or do you think that Sky Strikers are better with the ability to +1 off pretty much every spell once you get your graveyard as big as possible? Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to check out the other series on my channel, such as Top Deck and Player Deck and Builder Deck, of course, and I'll see you guys in the next one.